to our March forum. We've got some really good things actually this time. I have to say I'm quite excited about this one myself. I'm quite interested to hear Sebastian's little spiel. So, okay, so what are we going to cover today? If my slide deck wants to move, can everybody see my screen? You're all seeing the agenda now, is that right? Oh. Okay, all right. So today we're going to do the Sharedo legal market strategy with Sebastian. Then we're going to do a bit on the release management. I did actually ask Stuart to put this section in for you because I think it's something that we've been bringing about over the past 6 to 8 months, and it would be really good for you all to hear how it's going to benefit you, and kind of why we're doing it and how we're going to manage it. Then Nicola, who will be known to some of you, she's going to be taking us through Sharedo and how we manage litigation in there. And then Ben's going to come in at the end with his roadmap update. So I think we're going first to you, Sebastian. So I'll leave you to share your screen.
Lucky me. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Sebastian, Director of Sales and Marketing at Sharedo. So probably customers up until the beginning of last year, you are very lucky because you didn't have to meet me through your purchasing journey. But for those who are aware, and I've known you before, good to see everyone on the call today. I feel like I'm being set up a little bit to fail here, where I'm going to deliver a massive market strategy and a big wow. I'm going to focus on a bit about last year, some of the successes and how they were brought about. A bit of a focus on where we're heading and where we're at this year, and then a lot of feedback that we've got from existing customers of the solution and where we're at and what their focuses are, and then a little bit of news about what we're doing in the Australian market. So hopefully this works, because sometimes it doesn't. I'm going to try and share this and open this in Teams. Let's go. There is a problem displaying the content. Oh, let's try that again.
Going so well, Sebastian.
It's, I mean, lucky we actually sign any business at this rate. Eh?
It's probably worth saying that Seb's in Australia at the moment, so it's like past 10 o'clock at night for Seb, and he normally goes to bed at 9. So,
Ben, would you be able to bring up the slides, because it doesn't seem to let me to share? So yeah, I do apologise. I think I shared them with you on Slack.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll do that for you.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. User forum. Cool. Let me share my screen.
Perfect. That seems to work.
Cool. Okay, you're all good then, yeah?
Perfect, thanks. So as everyone's aware, last year was probably the most successful year we've had to date. We were selected by 11 new customers, both in the UK and the Australian market. Really successful in the legal space, both mid and upper tier law firms. We also signed a regulatory body and an insurance firm. I think the diversity of the product and the application, we can see that it's not only certain verticals or certain types of law firms. We saw, oh, Ben, I think your screen's gone. Is that gone for everyone else?
No, still there.
No. So yeah, last year, very successful year, onboarded 11 new customers, and a really exciting journey for us. If Ben, you go to the next slide. So what that meant for us was a 50% growth year on year. We're now in 22 jurisdictions. We now have 15,000 users on the application. To date, we've now spent 150 person years on R&D. We have 8 solution accelerators for 8 8 major practice groups, and we now have 50 million matters completed since the start of our journey. So some huge figures there, and we're expecting similar growth this year. Ben, if you go on to the next slide, which is our platform and the strategy. So part of the trip and the journey, as Jenny said, I'm in Australia, is meeting existing customers, but also meeting future customers. And the conversations and the journey and the experience I'm having and speaking to people is the appetite for the omni-channel digital desktop, which is Sharedo, the low-code environment that we're creating and have created, the legal domain expertise and features, and the solution accelerators are enabling us to be completely market leading in the marketplace, which is really exciting to get both feedback from existing customers and future customers saying, you know what, you're on the right journey, your product's in the right place, and it's really amazing what you're doing in terms of our journey and transforming our legal practices. So on the final slide, Ben, if you want to jump onto, I'm just talking about market focus. So we had a big think at the end of last year, and we've got a footprint and a presence in Australia and a growing footprint and presence in Australia. And we said we're going to focus on this market quite heavily. So we've now opened our first international office, which is in Australia. It's a key market focus for us, and we're planning across all our key markets. So Australia, UK and EU. When I say EU, we're mainly looking at the Irish market, and we're expecting an increase of 5,000 users this year. So some huge targets, some huge focuses, but a really exciting journey. So last year was a massive success, and it's looking like this year is going to be equally as successful. I think that's me, Teresa. That was the introduction onto the next person.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I add to that is just in terms of market focus, so it's still and we're going to continue for the foreseeable future, just focusing on big law and big insurance. So it's only the largest law firms. We're not planning to work our way down at all. But that's good. Thanks, Sebastian.
Thanks, Ben.
Right, Stuart, I think it's you.
Yeah, I will get on camera. Great. Okay. So yeah, I guess I was asked to talk a little bit about how we've been changing and improving release management. Hopefully my slides load.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yes, I thought I'd just break it down into 3 simple bits, really. Kind of where we were with release management and what some of you may have seen, and I won't dwell on that too much, but where we are now and how it works now, and kind of where I see us going with release management. So let me see. So I guess in the past, and I guess talking kind of early V6 and before V7, we kind of had this delivery approach of rapid delivery, fix fast, fix forward. We were dropping releases every 2 weeks, and we kind of had limited time to regression test those. We focused on the features and the changes. We had limited time to automate them, and I guess there were some positives in that. Yeah, for people who were customers, then we were able to push out fixes and features really, really quickly. If it broke, we would fix it really quickly. We'd get out next release, and that was good. But yeah, as with that guy who's fallen off his bike, there were obviously some problems, and so we recognized as we grew up as a product, we tried to get a bit more mature about it, a bit more structured and gated around how we do these things. So we spent the kind of last year and since V7 trying to put in some new processes into how we manage our releases. So I guess as a highlight of that, we've kind of moved to this prioritized value-based delivery approach. So we have like proper product review boards. We prioritize our features. We introduced this concept of 3 amigos, which you may be familiar with, maybe not, but effectively it's where if 3 people work on a feature or through from its kind of inception all the way through to its delivery. Those 3 people usually being the kind of the QA, the BA, and the dev. And we've kind of slowed down our release cycle. We'll continue to do that. And that's now we're about kind of 4-6 weeks, maybe 6-8 weeks now. And we'll continue to kind of slow it down just to put some more rigor into the process. We completely updated our branching and release strategy, so the way that we handle code and the way that we kind of fork out for development and then regression test it and feature test it and bring it back in and select it for releases. All of that changed drastically, along with giving us kind of dedicated environments to do that testing. And we've also kind of formalized our regression process, which now has dedicated environments for release testing and regression testing. And very recently, we've just done a kind of new partnership with or engagement with guys called QA Wolf. QA Wolf are a third-party automation testing company, and they will be helping us to kind of accelerate on our side the delivery of automated test suites. And we're providing them dedicated environments to that, and we'll be putting the automated processes into all the stages of our release cycle. So how does it look? I guess this is a slide you probably may have seen before, and we created it a while back, and it was kind of our idea of how we wanted it to work. And we've spent the last year putting in these building blocks and getting things right in this area. So it kind of tells the journey of a feature, really. Which I'll just try and go through really briefly. So we've got the kind of stage of idea generation, and those ideas come from you guys, they come from customers, they come from us and what we want to do with the product. They come from our operations team and how we want to make things better for monitoring or logging or alerting and so on. And we have a backlog of all those features and we prioritize them. We have a bit of t-shirt sizing and kind of go, yeah, that's going to be really hard, that's going to be really light. Customers really want that in the next month. Customers don't need that for a little while. And that kind of leads into our long-term planning, which is kind of against what Ben will talk about at the end and how we kind of what's coming. And then once we kind of decide on that prioritization, we create a release iteration just for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and we bundle that full of scope, and that will be bugs and features and so on. And we do a bit of design work on them and we flesh them out, and then they enter build. And in build, we kind of have this concept now of the three amigos. So the three amigos all get together and they kind of flesh out the feature, talk about how it's all going to work. They create acceptance criteria. They put in test plans, and then we deliver off the back of that. Once it becomes a release, we push it into customer success and it goes into the kind of run cycle. And there's this kind of continuous feedback loop that we're doing. So, I mean, as I said, that slide's been there for a while, and it kind of tells a story about from start to end. I was going to talk a little bit more about the actual release workflow, and just to kind of show you how that happens and what happens at various stages in that process. So if we're looking at an example, say version 7.5, which is our next target release, and which we just started, right? So we're probably 4 to 6 weeks off of version 7.5 coming out. And right now there is no packaged release. We're all just still steadily building new features, designing new features, and some of them have been built already and they're ready for test, and some of them are built already and they're ready to go into the package. And at some point in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to create these pre-release versions. And the pre-release versions go into our automation environments. They go into our pre-release environments, and they allow kind of QA and ops to look at the features that have been built so far in an integrated manner, run automation on them, get an idea of how they're going to test them, run through those scenarios. When we get to about 2 weeks prior to us wanting to ship the release, we cut the code and we say we're done, not adding anything else into this, and we pick everything out. So we don't take everything that we've produced, we pick the features that we want to go into the release, because there are features that we're more confident or less confident about, and there's features that we know customers need, there's features that we think should wait and we've tested more thoroughly, and so we pick the set of features that we want into a release candidate. And again, similar cycle with that. We automate that in our environments. We do some packaged automation and QA. And finally, when we're all happy with them, we've done our process in all of our environments, we put it into what we call our staging ring. And the staging ring is when you guys really first start to see it. So we hit demo 1 with it, we hit our core 1 environments with it. And if you're in an active engaged project with us, you've probably been asking for features, or you're keen on new features, or maybe you're wanting to get the latest releases all the time. And so this is kind of the stage when almost immediately when we produce the release, your environments will get those releases, and that's usually kind of your vNext environment. We then have this kind of concept of release rings, and this is kind of where we sit customers to kind of say, well, some of you are in the kind of fast category. You're quite happy for us as a kind of SaaS provider to just go, hey, there's a new release, we're deploying it tomorrow. We'll hit you with it as soon as you're ready. You know, those of you know that process, it's fully automated. It doesn't really require very much downtime, and we just hit you with it, and it will go out to you that night. There's more often people who are kind of sit in the standard category, or people who kind of they want regular updates, but they'd like it planned in. They want to make sure their users are aware that's happening. There's changes to happen. Maybe they want to kind of validate it, and this is going into vNext and UAT environments. So they want to make sure that they know they're lined up with the features they want to test, that they want to look at the impact that happens to their configuration. So that's kind of the standard. And then we've got people who we categorize in kind of the slow. That's not derogatory. It just means that you've got more barriers, you've got more stuff in your kind of process. So you want to make sure that you go through full regression tests. You want to make sure you know about the releases, plan them in more thoroughly. Maybe you don't want every point released every 6 to 8 weeks. That's fine. And so you kind of fall into that category where we'll run releases to you every so often. So I guess that's that bit. In terms of kind of how we operate now as well, I'm going to highlight this because it's something that we're going to be moving and changing over the next 6 months. Currently, we produce these kind of gold config packages, if you like, the gold core package, and that gets produced by that process we just saw, and that's what we ship in terms of our core code. And you may have people also working on plugins. So they're working on like customizations and plugins, and they're doing that kind of separately in a DevOps project, and they're building code that's going to go into your solution. And then you kind of got your gold config, which usually sits in your kind of analyst's vNext environment. And we're kind of combining there some IDE stuff. Some of you create your own widgets and aspects for seeing things in Shardee. And so that all sits in these environments. That's all good, and we kind of got this gold config, but there are limitations in that, which I think we're starting to hear feedback around in terms of, if you're a customer and you're developing these plugins, it's difficult for you to kind of have a place to test those, because you don't really want to ram them into your vNext environment all the time, because it's disruptive. And your IDE files, they're okay being managed here, but they're not really in a source control repository. They're just in an environment. So it works, and this is the process. You'll know about it. We promote the core release. The analysts create packages that have got configuration. We ship them up, and then you can deploy the plugins into these environments, and it works. It's good. But I'll reflect back on that in a minute, because where we're going is kind of slowing down that release model a bit further. We'll probably go into more of a predictable kind of scope-based release delivery model, where we kind of fill up a glass, if you like, half full at the beginning of a release cycle, and as we go through, we fill it up entirely, and it gives us a bit more predictability in terms of what we're going to deliver to you every quarter. We may still stay at 8 weeks because we quite like doing it fast, but we'll see. We're going to go fully automated for regression. Everything's going to be we're going to keep our engagement going with QA Wolf. We're going to build out our own capability in doing automation, and our goal is to get kind of more than 80% of the APIs covered through full automation. And then we're going to try and support that customer development journey. So we're doing this thing called Shardee in a box, if you like, and it's basically being able to have a Shardee development environment for customers. So you'll be able to download the Shardee package, stand up an environment on a development machine, build your plugins, build your ID stuff, have that all under source control, and then have the ability to kind of deploy it out through your environment. So it's a bit more in your control, and a bit less having to be reliant on your vNext environment and things. And I guess what that kind of looks like is a bit more like this, where we introduce this kind of shared you in a box dev environment, which customers can use. You don't have to use it, but if you were building your own customizations, you wanted your own stuff in the IDE and plugins, then it gives you an environment where you can kind of bring the data and bring the configuration back from vNext, and there'll be processes to support that into kind of your own dev environment, and kind of deploy it and build that up, and then work with Shared and build your own customizations yourselves if you want to use that capability. Because I guess the end goal for us is always to make it as configurable as possible. So this is really a scenario where you need to. Yeah, and that's about it. All good for me.
Right.
Thanks. Just to add to that, I mean, thanks, Stuart. That's really good. Hey, I mean, I guess probably if you look at our client base, there's probably, I don't know, I guess a third are sort of taking advantage of these sort of super advanced features. And I guess it's always the intention that you can get away with zero code, just doing it through the modeler. But if you really need to take it that step further, custom integrations or whatever it might be, that we'll always support that ability to extend the platform as far as you want to take it. And I guess what Stuart's describing is making that process slicker and slicker and slicker for I guess the sort of the 33% of the clients who really want to stretch things quite far.
Yeah.
Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about our new litigation accelerator. So if I borrow the screen, share mine. Got a few slides to go through, but hopefully not too much. So let me know when you can see this. You see that? Bro, thanks. So let me jump back up to the top. So this accelerator pack is currently designed to cover anything that falls into England and Wales litigation and Part 7 proceedings. So what does that mean? That means anything that falls into small claims track, fast track, multi-track, and it covers both raising and responding to proceedings, so claimant and defendant side. So in theory, you can have multiple proceedings in a case, so it will handle that much more smoothly now, and it will recognise when the workflows need to change, when the data capture needs to change, based on whether you are raising or responding to that set of proceedings. So the objective of the accelerator is very much about assisting the case handler to meet the requirements. So whether they're court directions, court orders, or court deadlines, as well as making sure you're integrating that into your client requirements as well. So we can tie together court timetables as well as your things like your client SLAs that perhaps you have defined in your statements of work. So it's all meant to be assistive. It's not meant to be too heavily kind of forceful in terms of workflows, and I'll show you a couple of different ways that we've designed it to be used based on who the user is and how they want to interact with the system. There's a couple of different ways we've actually approached that, so there's much more flexibility to it. Follows the standard legal process of handling either issuing or receiving issued proceedings, the process around litigation, and we know that a lot of courts and a lot of clients are encouraging us trying to not to get to the point of trial, trying to settle early, so it's very much aligned to that kind of methodology and that approach. And then obviously into settlement, whether that's settling damages and costs at the same time or separately, it recognises those differences as well. So what is the process? In a really, and I apologise to any legal staff and lawyers on the call today, but in a really simplistic way, we've kind of broken it down into recognising when there's variation and when actually there isn't much variation, it's just changing perhaps how you're approaching it. So the idea is this slide is hopefully going to kind of demonstrate, and I'll show you how this looks in the system, but ultimately when you're raising proceedings, you have these extra stages at the beginning to issue those proceedings and to potentially do a default judgment request if it's needed. For responding to proceedings, you are receiving in issued proceedings and then generating your AOS in your defence. Everything that comes after that is pretty similar for both sides. So you both have to produce DQs, you both go through disclosure and exchange, you both prepare for your trials and attend your trials. So what we've done is we've identified what those common elements are, handled them as common elements properly, but then we're going to give you the opportunity to be able to edit them and tweak them and configure them how you need them to. But it just means you start from a consistent position, irrelevant of which side of the fence you're on. So what's in the box? What's in the accelerator? So you've got the usual stuff. You've got the configuration of participant roles. You've got key dates. You've got data capture. We've also created a new interface. So we've created new task types, new portal pages, and we've also created quite a number of workflows to handle those standard litigation processes. So if anyone has any questions now, feel free to either raise a hand or pop something in the chat. Otherwise, I will stop showing you slides and show you a shiny new system. Okay, no hands, brilliant. Okay, so this is what I've kind of opened into is a standard kind of defendant RTA case. So there's no litigation on here at the moment. So what I thought I'd do is run through the litigation process with you and show you what it looks like in reality. So on here we have a shiny new button that says proceedings, and we can record that we've now received a new proceeding. So you might have received the proceeding pack in the post instruction, or you might have received it as part of your instruction from a client, for example. Standard kind of data capture, it needs to know upfront to then define the right workflows and the right activities to fire off the back. So it's recognizing I'm going to be responding to it because I've received it. It's going to ask me who I want to bring into this set of proceedings. Often you may have a case that has 3 claimants on it, but actually only 1 or 2 of those claimants are party to these proceedings. So if I had multiples here, I can select who's part of the proceedings. I can also order my parties as well, so you get the correct court order, correct court headers as well on your court documents later on. So I'm going to say I'm happy with that. I'm going to pick the type of court. I can have a standard list of reasons for litigation that you can obviously customize yourself. If I don't have the court reference number now, it won't force me, but it will remind me later to put it in if I haven't already. I'm just going to pop something in for now. Again, if I know the track type or how it's been issued, I can also enter that. So we'll go for a nice standard fast, and we'll go for old school CCMCC. If I wanted to capture perhaps some reasons for litigation and why it happened or why it was unavoidable, I can do that. And like with anything in Shady, you can configure these blades to capture perhaps client requirements, client data capture drop-down lists. You can add those into this blade in this aspect as needed. So once I've saved that, we will hopefully get, here we go, an option to view the portal. So at this stage, I've created effectively a set of proceedings on my case, and I can go in and view this as its own entity almost within Shady. You'll notice here there's a button here that says back to matter. So this takes me back to my matter dashboard if I wanted to go back and look at what else is happening on the case. But it also has these new tabs across the top. So we'll work through those as we go. So this is our proceedings dashboard. This is the basic information about this set. So you've got a timetable, you've got comments, key facts, the kind of standard stuff you might have on your dashboard page. You've also got the participants that are relevant to the proceedings. So perhaps you had somebody that was recorded on your main matter that isn't actually relevant. So perhaps a witness or some kind of an engineer, perhaps who was looking at repairs. They're not relevant to the proceedings, so they don't automatically come across unless you want them to. So you can design what you do and don't want to sync through to your set of proceedings. It's recognised that it's a new set of proceedings, so it's created my first task for me. So this first task is saying, right, review the claim form and look at what the particulars of claim that are being claimed are. So it's very consistent all the way through the design of this, that it's based on tasks and then usually action plans attached to those tasks, so that it's not too bitty running these task flows. So here we want to record the date of service because we need to know that to be able to calculate our AOS and defence due dates. So I'm going to pop that in. If I knew the issue, I can also add that in, and I'm going to save that. Once I've completed that, I can tick it off, a standard kind of interaction with our action plans. If I had a copy of the claim form and the particular claim in my DMS, I can access my DMS with this handy little link. I'm going to pretend I've reviewed that. If I wanted to update my budget at the same time, I can also go straight into my budgets. It will very handily open this as a new page, so it's not kind of taking me out and I have to go back in. I can review my budgets, perhaps update my reserves, add in the opponent valuation, things like that, and then go back into my actual main screen to be able to say, yes, I've completed that task. Another consistent approach we've got is in terms of what we want to do next. So we know in litigation there's not, ABC simple kind of process design all the time. So we've created things like gateway steps. So here you can say, right, well, actually, at this point, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I need to talk to my client. So you might want to have this update client option to say you want to get some further instructions, you want to notify them, perhaps agree a strategy, etc. You might want to counterclaim. You might want to make an application to set aside. But again, for the purpose of this demo and to keep us flowing through the process, I'm going to say, right, now I've received it, I need to draft my AOS. Once I'm happy that I've reviewed this, happy what I'm going to do, I'm going to complete this task. In the background now, it's running a workflow to say, hold on a minute, someone's put in a very important date here, so I need to calculate some things off the back of it. So you can see the court timetable that's previously blank has now got the dates in that I've recorded, and it's also auto-calculated dates off the back of it. So we've automatically recorded what the AOS due date is and what the AOS defence date is. And if I refresh my task list, you can see now I've also got 2 tasks saying, right, you need to do your AOS, you need to do your defence. So really simple. But hopefully really useful, particularly for people perhaps who want to be able to do this en masse or haven't maybe got loads of experience in litigation. So when I run these tasks to file and serve, I'm not going to go through all of these because it's exceptionally repetitive, as I'm sure you can imagine, but it will have a document. So you'll have your template, perhaps AOS or your template defence attached to this that I can generate from here and I can update from here as well. And then I can decide how I'm serving this. If you know how that solicitor's taken service, so if you know it's solicitor service, accept service via email, we can build that into the system so it automatically sends it via email. But if it doesn't know, you always get this choice of being able to decide whether it's by email or post, or if you still wanted to, you could always use DX. So I'm going to say it's via post, and I'll say, right, I've completed this, I've magically generated my AOS, I've put in my details that I need to, and I've now served this, or filed and saved it to the parties. Again, the court timetable should update for me to recognise when I've done that. Fingers crossed. Yeah, there we go. Now, obviously, the dates are a little bit out of whack here because I'm working way ahead of schedule, which is a nice position to be in. The other thing you might notice is this phase is now progressing. So we have standard phases and proceedings. This is separate to your matter phase. This is just in relation to the proceedings and litigation process. So because this is defendant side, so this is responding to, we have this stage for AOS defence and DQ. On the other side, if I was raising, you'd obviously have slightly different stages. So I'll show you that as an example in a minute. So the whole process follows this really similar cadence. I'm going to just flip through these just so that I can show you the kind of the process that it follows. So again, I've done my defence spectacularly early, which is a nice experience. And if I refresh this now, it's going to recognise that I've completed my AOS, I've completed my defence. So all going well, it should now create some new tasks for me and recognise that I've now moved in to this phase of DQ. So I now need to do my directions questionnaire. So it will automatically update your milestones for you, so you don't have to go and remember to change your present position. And it will also automatically create and manage your key dates as well. A nice thing about key dates is obviously this list can get quite long, particularly if you've got an awful lot of activity happening on it. So you can also view this in a calendar view. So obviously this is all going to be blocked in one chunk here because I'm obviously completing a lot of the tasks today. But this is a really nice way to view kind of from a kind of operational point of view where your key dates are coming up to in terms of litigation. You can also look at litigation key dates as a team view as well. So if I went back up to my kind of standard dashboards of managing it where I manage my proceedings and manage my matters, there's also ways to view this calendar as a group. So that if you know somebody's away for a day or somebody's on holiday, you can go and easily identify which of these key activities that you don't want to be missing because you don't want to be missing your court timetable and your court deadlines. So back to my dashboard, it should now have created a task for me to recognise that I need to now do my DQ. So it's saying, well, when's the DQ due? So I can go into my key dates. I can set the date it is due. 4 persons having to work, I think, on the Saturday. And once I'm happy with that, it will then kickstart the next stage of the process to say, right, well, based on the fact you've told me when your DQ is due, I'm going to start creating tasks for you to then prepare your DQ. So this is the entire kind of cadence. This is the flow of how the litigation pack works. I'm not going to go through the entire flow, but what I will show you, hopefully if I've got it open, here we go. This is a standard phase plan. So this is a defendant one, so this is response side. So we've simplified a little bit. I appreciate there are lots of variations in this, but as you move through each of these stages, you'll be completing these core workflows, you'll be capturing your key dates, your key data. But if you follow the workflows, it will progress you automatically through it. So you don't have to remember to go and do those present position updates. Each of these have, like I say, workflows associated with it. Now, as you can imagine, some of the workflows can get a bit busy. So I've got an example for anybody who does do configuration so you can kind of get a flavour of what it looks like. It probably looks a little bit scary than it really is. But you can see all of these, well, a lot of these activities are actually system driven. So it might be that actually For example, the system is setting the due dates, or the system's calculating the due dates. The system also recognises that you might be expecting documents in. So, for example, when you submitted your DQ, it creates an expectation for notice of allocation. So you don't have to manually create any of these tasks; it will create them for you as you progress through the kind of the litigation process. The other thing worth mentioning is I recognise not everyone is going to want to run the entire litigation kind of system from begin to end through workflows. And it may even be that you actually get instructed halfway through litigation where some of it is already being completed. So we also have the flexibility, rather than just working through workflows, you can also trigger workflows and trigger these kind of phases by creating key tasks. So if I go back into my court timetable and I pretend I'm going to jump ahead and say, right, I've now got a direction for my list of docs. So I can create a key date to say when my list of documents for disclosure is due. And when I save that, it will then start recognize that key date's been created. It will recognize the workflows needed off the back of it. Here we go, thankfully. I do love it when a demo works. It will then start to create the tasks associated with that phase. So you can jump in later if you want to. And perhaps if you've got a user that doesn't want to workflow everything, but perhaps recognizes something like lists of docs where there's lots of kind of parallel processes running alongside, they might see the benefit in doing it this way. As usual, you can also access your court documents through here. So just like you have the prepared documents menu on your Matter, you can access just your core documents, so you have that restricted view. You can also restrict which document templates you see in here based on things like the phase. You don't need to perhaps see stuff like your pre-trial checklist when you're still in the DQ phase, things like that. So you can really kind of refine and kind of configure this to be as slick as possible. So that's the kind of the core approach to how we've designed the Accelerator Pack. A couple of things to mention. There are certain activities you'll undertake during litigation that can happen at any time. And rather than try and over-engineer the pack to account for every kind of variation in those microprocessors, we've got a couple of different ways of approaching it. So we've got one here that is what we call a microprocessor, like mini workflows. So a couple of examples we've built in is things like instruct counsel and instruct expert. So you might do this at any stage during litigation. You might do it multiple times during litigation as well. So these run like a mini standalone workflow. That means you can go and instruct your counsel, select them. You can define whether you're instructing them to do a brief or to attend a hearing or things like that. And again, you can add your workflows into here as well. So if you have extra tasks that you want to undertake, so perhaps you have standard client reporting you need to do every month, or perhaps you have a standard document that you need to prepare for supervision, you could build these in as microprocessors really easily. The other approach we've got is something called court activities. So I can create them here, and I can also view them here in this tab. So for demo purposes, I'll just do a quick demo of, say, a hearing. So again, you can have multiples of these during the process. So what this is recognizing is saying, well, actually, there's lots of different types of hearings. So what kind of hearing is this? You can assign it to different people. You can set things like your due dates for it. So if I pop in some dates, let me see if it was having a little bit of a fit over some of that. Bear with me. Fab. So it should now start to create. I just add in my court. There we go. So this will now create kind of a hearings record for me. And it's going to record this on a slightly different screen for us. Let me have a look, Judge. There we go, Bob Judge. Anyone who knows me knows everyone's called Bob in my world, or certainly in demo world. So if I save that, it's now going to create a key date for me in a second if I've set it to, and I can also now view this in my core activities. So if I wanted to see all of the hearings that have happened, or for example, these examples, we have applications and orders as well. You've got one place to see it really easily. You can also, if you want to, and you can configure this kind of as far as you want to go with it, but you can also have things like additional data capture. So for example, you might want to start recording the outcome of that hearing, or who attended the hearing, whether there was costs associated with the outcome of that hearing. You can also manage it through statuses, so you can record that it was adjourned or cancelled, for example. I'm going to set that one as adjourned. Exactly the same approach is taken for applications and orders. So just like we saw before, we can say, right, I want to create a court application. You can record things like estimated duration, how we want to deal with it, so whether it's in person, remote, oral, etc. Why you're having it, type of judge you need. So if you wanted to, you could record this data and then auto-generate your application document off the back of it. So it's kind of got the basics in there. It's got those fundamentals that means you can then take that forward and do some straight through processing and do some document automation off the back of it as well. So that's what a standard kind of perhaps a litigation pack would look like. And then just for info, so we've been looking here at very much like a received kind of respond to proceedings view. And as I mentioned, you can find it. Yeah, this is an example of a claimant side. So this is where we're raising these proceedings. So you can see in this example, the phase plan's slightly different at the beginning in that it has this issue phase. So in this issue phase, then additional tasks to go, right, you need to draft your proceedings pack. You might have checklists that you want to build before you get into litigation to do pre-lit kind of, do we need to litigate checklists and investigations. We've got some basics in here around things like template documents. So you might want to give the user the choice of which claim form they use, or you might actually want to say, well, based on these parameters, we're going to automatically tell them they need to use this one, or they need to do a, for example, service out of jurisdiction. So this is as configurable as you want it to be, or as kind of flexible as you want it to be, depending on how and where you're going to implement it in your business. So that's a very quick summary of a very big accelerator pack, which I hope you found was useful. And if you've got any questions, feel free to put your hand up. Otherwise, I will pass over to Ben. Oh, yeah, Teresa?
I actually have a question. So do they need a particular version to implement this pack?
No. 7.3 probably, actually. Is that
7.3.
fair, Ben?
I reckon probably 7.3, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So if anybody is interested in guessing that, then just drop me a message. I think pretty much everyone on the call had some kind of interaction with me. But yeah, you can just drop an email over to me and I will get on Nicola's case for you. Okay, over to you, Ben.
That was really good, Nicola. Thank you. I've changed my agenda around as a good segue from that. Let's see if I can share my screen, which I often struggle to do. Can you see my screen? Yeah, all good.
Yep.
Right, let's see if the web version will also do a slideshow. Is it going to do it? Hooray, happy days. Right, we've booked it for an hour and a half. I'll try and keep it under, hey. But we'll see how we go. Questions are always appreciated as we go through it as well. I've changed it around. I'm going to talk about the concept of immersion in a second. A little bit on release 8, where we are. A little bit about what we delivered in 7.3 and 7.4. I think the last time I did that, I did an update. I think we just shipped 7.2 and a little bit about what we're working on in 7.5. I'll try and do a little bit of demo as we go through this. So I guess what I'm really conscious of is we always show all these best practice examples and they're constantly changing. Like if I looked at the previous version of the proceedings accelerator, it didn't have all of those the same sophistication of phase plan. It was a lot more manual and hence didn't give as much information or assistance to people, right? So that's best practice. Some people might be running old proceedings, right? So how do you see this best practice? Well, we always demo from demo 1 and indeed quite a lot of people have got access to demo 1 and are welcome to give you that access. One of the things we're going to do though is create what we're working title of an immersion environment. So this is along with your training courses and your help.sharedo.co.uk. It's an environment where you can go and see our best practice and not just the accelerators, but maybe you want to know how to configure data protection, right? It's quite complex to configure that. You maybe want to just see it in action. So you can go to an environment and see all those sort of things. So it's probably, I'm imagining, going to take us another 2 months to get this all sorted. In the meantime, you can go to demo 1. I know a few people got access to that already, or you can just, speak to Teresa, get to speak to one of the professional services people, and they can help you with that. But this is going to be an environment dedicated to you to look at best practice, and then you can choose what bits you want to take into your solution, right? So that is coming soon. It's something we're working on at the moment. Hopefully by the next one of these, we can maybe do a demo of that stuff. Right. I've changed my agenda around. So I'll just picking up from Stuart, and Stuart always does beautiful slides. Just really wanted to say where we are in terms of release 8. So yeah, Stuart highlighted we're sort of working 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it is with these various point releases as we go forward. Personally, I would never be afraid of taking a point release. We're working on lots of very of features that are non-breaking. When we do roll over to release 8, that's where there will be a more significant feature that's going to require effort from either our services team or from you guys, hey, to embed that within your environment. So these point releases are generally pretty minor changes. The other thing Stuart spoke about was pace, actually. And certainly from the product team have grown quite a lot recently. So in many ways, our pace is picking up in terms of enhancements. I think the stat I saw the other day was we're doing roughly 1 enhancement per working day at the moment. There's a lot of people contributing to that plainly. So 7.3, 7.4, I think there were roughly about 50 enhancements, some big, some small. And I know about 120 sort of UX tweaks, defects fixes alongside that. That pace, I think, will continue for a while. Hey, there's always, and I'll talk about how your input is really invaluable in a second, actually. So one of the areas we are investing, so I think we brought on into the product team, I think we've brought on 3 or 4 people in the last quarter. We brought on a couple of people to assist better on content creation. So a lot better release notes, a lot better help, all of that sort of stuff, along with the creation of immersion environment to make sure that you can, take advantage of all the good stuff the product team is shipping. Okay. So I was going to just really focus on a couple of these features rather than doing a really long, boring verbatim demo, right? So I'll maybe just pick on a couple of these. So if I just hopefully can get out, go back. Yeah, just for reference, if you want to go and look at latest release notes, they're in release notes on help.shed.uk. Yeah. So let's log on and I'll take you through a couple of these. So the first thing I was going to pick on was actually the logon experience. So you've actually got complete control of this, what logon providers you want to. Generally, most people have, Azure AD or Okta or something like that, and maybe Forms logon. And traditionally, it's confused users, right? Because they often, I always need to click on that one, but I'm showing this this option first, yeah. So that's now completely configurable within the environment. Let me just do single sign-on, and off I go. So just wanted to highlight that one. I think it's a really nice UX feature to confuse your users less. So I'm going to go into admin, go into my integrations, go into my identity server. And you'll see when you go over your different identity providers, I've only got 2 configured here, you'll see this idea of being able to move them up and down, right? So I can move them up and down, I can save that ordering, and it will change the priority of those on the login screen. So for lots of people who use Forms less than they use AD, you can now change that. Users get less confused, they don't put their AD password in the Forms password, everything's happy days. Yep. Next thing I wanted to show you was another sort of it's quite a long piece of work, but hopefully will yield some good usability benefits. And I think if I look across 7.5, I'd say at least half of the product backlog is UX changes. Maybe I'll just jump into a random defendant case. There's been a lot of changes to the chronology. So really around optimizing both the ability to see more, filter better, find better, and actually understand what's going on. So this has had a lot of work done on it in terms of almost flipping the hierarchy, the visual hierarchy in terms of the information you consume. So now you'll see the front and center is what's actually happened. I did a witness statement. I made a payment request. And then all of these have now got, to a great lesser degree, default actions. So if I want to go and open it, I click on it, I open it. Yeah. So lots of UX stuff that's coming through. And yeah, you guys are so much closer to your users than we are. You'll be noticing things that are annoying them, or they're actually speaking to you. And I'd really always encourage you to tell us. Yeah, as I say, there's a lot of velocity in terms of being able to make things better and better and better, and that's certainly what we're about. So feel free to feedback however you want. I'll maybe call out 2 clients in particular, both H's, Hall and Wilcox, Horridge Farrelly. I mean, the spreadsheets you give me, brilliant, right? Absolutely brilliant. I get a lot of value from that, and hopefully we deliver those changes pretty quickly. So that's just highlighting a couple of UX changes, and all of this stuff following the usual mantra of everything is configurable. There's a load of configuration you can do with things like chronology. So you can define your own custom chronology points. You've got APIs to support that. You can define the look and feel of these individual pages in terms of, do you want doc preview windows and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm not gonna cover that. The next piece I was gonna focus on from a demo, and again, it's flavor rather than in-depth on these sort of sessions, is look at all of the work that's being done to the workflow engine. I can't remember how long this version of the workflow engine has been out. Probably in our world about a year, I'm guessing, maybe slightly under that. From a product perspective, we are constantly producing new blocks, doing UX enhancements. So certainly what happens within our professional services teams is, if they are still writing JavaScript, and they are still writing JavaScript in some of these workflows, then we're circling that back into the product team to produce a block. So aiming to be able to do the most sophisticated workflows without writing any script. I'm going to pick on a random workflow. Oh, it doesn't do very. I picked on a very random small workflow. Happy days. What are we looking at here? B2C inquiries, onboarding, nurturing strategy. So it looks like a contact strategy. Yeah, so whenever we see a script block, and you can still do lots of stuff with scripts, especially for some of our older clients who are still using smart plans, all the stuff you can do there, you can go to your toolbox and add a script block and do whatever you need to do. Just going to pick on a couple of enhancements that have happened in 7.3 and 7.4. First one is being able to delay the starting of steps. So traditionally, this is a nurture strategy. So what's this trying to do? It's going sign up for my my legal services, right? So it's gone and started a process, allocated it to someone, sent them an SMS reminder, and then it's just going to wait a couple of days, right? And that's super easy to do. The start step has been extended, and you can now go, actually, I'll just want to wait for a few bits and pieces, yeah. In terms of the toolbox, this toolbox is gradually growing with more and more bits and pieces. So we've added a lot more finance support, and that's going to continue into 7.5. So if you want to set your matrix reserves, that's super simple to do. If you want to create an invoice payment request or whatever it might be, that, again, dead easy. We've added support for calling matching rules, and that's one of the things that may make 7.5, but for those of us who are using matching rules a lot, you often have to write weird data composer expressions that evaluate to null to be able to use them in matching rules. All that stuff goes away. That may or may not make 7.5, but basically the rules engine stuff gets super sophisticated very shortly. So yeah, there's going to be better support for evaluating business rules from workflows, but actually the whole rules engine becomes a lot more sophisticated very soon. I think that's probably it from a very quick look at the smorgasbord of changes. It's moving quite quickly, but yeah, again, if you're missing a block, then feel free to forward that via anyone or directly to me. That's always really appreciated. Hey, I was actually going to touch on one more actually. With the UX of some of these triggers, adding triggers and binding them was particularly challenging to some people. So that's got a lot smarter in terms of, I've got this specific event that needs to trigger a workflow. How do I take the variables from the event and put them into my workflow, which for old school smart plan people is basically the manipulation of the EV.data stuff that you used to do. That's a lot slicker in this world. Okay, so that's a little bit of a look at, I guess, some of the enhancements that happen in workflow. Assuming everyone's happy, I'll have a little look at some of the enhancements we'll be doing to the portal modeler, and I guess how that's hopefully enabling you to create better user experiences for your users. So I'll go back to the front end. Is this a good example? Possibly. Actually, let's see what, let's duplicate that tab. Let's go back here. I've introduced a couple of new portal styles. So things you can do. So this is your sort of traditional workbench. You can go, right, I would like to open an instruction, and I'll open up this instruction. So now you can present a piece of work. This happens to be an instruction. This is how we've configured it, but it's within the context of your workbench. Yeah. So I'm managing an instruction for Anne Harris to do whatever it is, and it's using a tab nav. So you can use a simplified case view as a UX style if you want to. And I guess when Nicola was showing proceedings, you saw proceedings embedded completely within the Matter portal, right? So you've got lots and lots of different UX styles that you can use, and I'll just give you a little bit of insight into how some of that's configured. Okay, so I'm guessing most people are familiar with the idea of personas. So I'm looking at the workbench config here, and it can be as simple as going, actually, I've got different workbenches. In the case of a B2C client, I've got a single page application, so it's all managed for a single page, or your more traditional sort of left-hand nav. And a lot of the settings we've got in terms of controlling that are controlled by master pages. And I'm not going to go through that verbatim. Now, I know, I was speaking to Teresa, we're going to do a sort of advanced portal modeling course, possibly a little bit later in the year. But if you are interested in going, how do I approach UX design, maybe for your client portal, maybe for your consumer portal, indeed for your fee owners, then just give us a shout and we'll walk you through some of the options there. The only other thing I was going to talk about in portals were a couple of extra widgets. So I'll maybe go into a Matter portal. Let's go down, disputes, recoveries will do. Okay, so we've introduced some better targeting of widgets. Actually, let me go back a bit to help explain this. Let's go back to my work types. The problem with Sharedy is it's too configurable, and that's also the opportunity as well. So the more configuration you've got, the harder it is to maintain and all of that good stuff, right? So you can create a different portal experience for every single matter type. So here you can see I've got a separate portal for recoveries, for claimant, for collective actions, for debt, etc. Right? Now I could refine that down and have lots of different portals for each type of maybe a defendant dispute, or the same for real estate. Makes no odds, yeah. The disadvantage of that is that actually a lot of the portals are common across all of these different matter types. Maybe the chronology page is the same, or my disbursements page is the same. Yeah. So what we've introduced is better ability to target pages and widgets at different matter types. Yeah. So what you'll see within both the portal designer is more abilities to say, actually only show this page when it's, what have I got here, defendant ADR or defendant PI, and that can go right down to only show this page if it's an ADR with breach of contract. Yeah, so you've got a lot more personalization. What does that mean? You can create less portals, you've got less maintenance, but actually from a user perspective, you can choose to only show your credit hire page for an RTA, right? So hopefully that's some really good targeting features you've got there. The other piece we've got to help focus in, let me find a good example of this. Let me go back to one of these cases. This RTA case maybe. What have I got in here? Maybe pick on an EL case. Oh, that's a good example. Cool. I haven't picked on a very good EL case, and it should be personalised. I shouldn't have credit hire there at all. But anyway, that aside, I'm conscious that only we've got an incredibly rich amount of information in these, but actually we need better control over our navigation and the actions we present to users. So you'll notice here I've got a new quick actions widget, and basically that's exactly the same as your menu options at the top. So it's configured in the same way. You add commands, configure what action you want to create, but you can now add these onto individual pages. So you can create specific, let's go to a better case here. What have I got here? Gonna have a look at this one. Not sure if I found a better one or not. So that's not great. All right, cool. So yeah, you've got better control over the different menuing for all of these bits and pieces. Cool. Okay, the final piece I wanted to touch on in terms of 7.4 and 7.3 features was a bunch of different changes that have been made to budgets and to the financial summary widgets. So I'll just touch on those maybe in the modeler to give you a little bit of a feel for some of the extra configuration settings you've got. So if I was to go on here to maybe my reserves page. Okay, so within the reserves page, you've now got a lot of additional settings for things like your finance summary widget, so how you want to plot your finances. So I'd encourage you to have a little look at some of these extra widgets. So they've now got full support for approvals, for plotting reserves against costs. So lots of advanced bits and pieces there. Cool. Any questions, or are we okay? Cool.
No.
Okay. So that's a little bit of what's in 7.3 and 7.4. There's a lot more if you look at the release notes in terms of bits and pieces there. So I'm going to spend a few moments on what's coming in 7.5. I will probably read these out verbatim. So there's approximately 60 features that may get cut down. We're still shipping based on value rather than anything else. But yeah, the current thought is about 60 enhancements. I've highlighted maybe whatever 10 or so of those. Again, the feedback we get from people in terms of what's important to them, the order at which they need them is really invaluable. So I'll pick on, I'd say about half of this list is coming from you guys at the moment, and I'm happy if it was 3/4, to be honest. So things that are coming in 7.5, from a UX perspective, it's things like users being able to save their own queries. So I will flip around a little bit so we get a feeling for that. So obviously we use lists all over the place. I've maybe got this portfolio list, and I might want to filter to say I only want ones that have issued or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's giving users the power to save those filters and persist them across different sessions, so they can go and create their little views to that they want to play with. So some end user support for that stuff. a bunch of different enhancements to the email blade, and that's certainly going to be continuing for the next few minor releases as we go through. The final piece in terms of UX, I'm really conscious that some of the participant connections, so that's managing whatever. Susan is represented by Bob, right? All of those things a bit clunky from a UX perspective at the moment, so there's a lot of work going on to streamline those journeys. From a workflow perspective, we are slowly getting to the end of some of these blocks that we require, or certainly we've seen, but again, your feedback's really welcome. So there's going to be new blocks around delivery channels, so particularly when you're building quite sophisticated contact strategies where you want to generate a document, ship it out via email, generate a document, send a link via an SMS, all of those sort of contact strategies. It's a bit clunky at the moment, so a few new blocks to help with that with those sort of processes. And then lots of enhancements around inter-process control. So I'm in a running workflow, I would like to stop another workflow. So I guess Nicola was showing some examples of that within litigation. So if you had to do a discontinuance within litigation, you want to stop all those other workflows. You want to be able to do that super slickly within the workflow designer. So lots of inter-process control type stuff to enable you to sort of do more advanced workflow patterns. Loads of enhancements in documents, but I'm just going to pick on one, which is court form integration with Form Evo. That's actually in test at the moment, so that will definitely be in 7.5. Couple more then. So performance, for those who've got very large data sets and have triggered a reindex, you can appreciate that can sometimes take some time to complete. Doesn't usually impact end user experience particularly, but still it's taking too long. So we're doing a bulk of work around your re-indexing of your elastic indexes, making sure that's quicker and more performant. And that generally applies to only users who've got a very, very large data sets. Yeah. The final piece is a lot of rewrite of fees. That a lot of that will come into 7.5. Certainly more of it coming to 7.6 in terms of making fees super configurable for. I've actually got a question. First question. Thank you, Gary. Read the end user list. Any plans to utilize cookies? Yes, it's exactly that, Gary, and a lot more. So it's really frustrating for users that they do a filter, then they come back to the page, and then it's lost the filters, right? So that's the bare minimum of that feature. What we're then going to do is you can save those filters as Ben's best filter #1, and then I can do another filter and save it as Ben's best filter #2. And the idea is that also system administrators will be able to save some of those queries. So rather than this being a single list view, I'll have an option to go, I want to see the portfolio by this filter or by that filter. Yeah, it's good news. It's been frustrating me too. Cool. Okay. Under time. That's it from me. I will say again, I mean, the feedback in terms of what you guys want from the platform is invaluable. I don't think many people are shy about coming forward, but if you are, don't feel shy. Any plans to support editable PDF forms? We have discussed it. Again, feel free to email me. So don't be shy about coming forward. Email Teresa, email me. I'm happy to spend the time. Hey.
Right.
Back to you, Teresa.
Thank you. So we are under time, so I'm just going to steal 5 minutes back for myself. So upcoming diary dates, I think everybody should know, but if you don't, if you want to see the events we've got coming up, so things like forums, roadmap updates, any training that we've got coming up, just go onto our website /events, or just use the events drop down, the menu drop down, and you can select events. And they'll all be listed on there with the links for you to register. So the next few we've got coming up, so we've got troubleshooting with Stuart. Hopefully Stuart's on the call and he's not sitting there now thinking, what? But troubleshooting, so looking at things like event engines, you know, if you're having problems when you're configuring and you want to just try to see if your workflow's working, all of those sorts of things, Stuart's going to cover that off with you on the 11th of April. Process modelling with Phil. So this one's always a hugely popular session, and essentially what Phil does is he talks you through how we conceptualise processes and then how we convert those into the workflow modeler within the system. So again, like I say, that one's always really popular, and we've kind of run that a couple of times already. And then one that's not specific to training, and for those of you that are British based, or haven't much going to fly a long way to come to it, is we will be at the British Legal Technology Forum on the 10th of May. So I assume, Sebastian, it will be you, and it'll be you running that.
Yeah, it'll be us and the team. And actually, there's good news because Ben is presenting this year. So if you want to see Ben in person and ask him lots of difficult questions, please head down. It will be on the guide to the British Legal Technology Forum. And Ben, what are you covering? I think it's low code, no code. Oh, you're on mute.
I guess the transformation we've gone through as a business, right, is about moving from code to low code, and I was going to talk about that, not particularly to do with ShareDo actually, but about the implications of that. Yeah, how can you transform the way in which you deliver value out to your clients, and the implications of moving faster, needing more BA and less dev, and yeah, so just discussing that, not particularly to do with ShareDo, but just generally about that sort of transformation program.
We've just had another question come in actually from Beth. Is the proceedings, this is for you, Nicola, is the proceedings tool in the ShareDo training environment so we can start to play with it?
I don't know if it is. Go on.
I was going to say, Beth, if you want to, you can have access to Demo 1. Loads of people got access to it. Yeah. Just ping us an email, we'll get that sorted for you. There is going to be this new immersion environment, but in the absence of that, we'll just give you access to Demo 1, yeah?
Right. Okay, so that's where we are. We'll give everybody 15 minutes back. That is all we've got to go through. Like I say, the next forum will be in about 6 months. Ben will do a halfway point with a roadmap update, so you can register. Like I say, it's all on the events page, so you can go and register there. And I'm sure you all know that I'm going to hassle you closer to the time anyway. All right, in which case, let's everyone have 15 minutes back and go and get lunch. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.